Hi and welcome back to LDF-Designs. I'm doing a part 1 video today where I am creating a structure, a vessel if you will, from scratch. I usually start these by using a paper doily as the base, and then I'm using cotton fabric strips, some drywall compound. I have a stucco mixture that has a little bit of premixed concrete and drywall compound and a little bit of paint mixed in it. And also I have some plaster wrap. So using this bowl as my mold, I am just applying all of these in various layers to create a structure. I have this sped up quite rapidly because it is quite an arduous process and very messy, and because again I'm the only one in the room, it's too hard for me to just deal with all of my electronic equipment and not get it too messy with plaster. So I did speed it up as much as I could for you. Once I get as many of the layers on as I feel I'm comfortable with, I then actually am going to take a piece of the parchment paper and apply it to the bottom of the piece, which you'll see here in just a second, and then I let it dry with that on there to try to help keep the bottom of it fairly smooth and level. So I let that layer dry, and then I came back to it and decided to go ahead and start adding a few more layers. It still felt a little bit thin and fairly fragile. I do intend to cover this, finish it with encaustic, so that's going to help with its longevity and with its structure rigidity. But I did feel like I wanted to put some more layers on the outside before I started applying more layers to the inside. So that's what I'm doing here, is just kind of a second layer of outside structure. One of the things that I like about building these kinds of structures is I like the edge to be a little more organic. I don't mind that it's not perfect and that it's uneven. So I don't worry about my strips being all the same length or reaching the same height. One of the reasons why I'm using the different kinds of fabric is sometimes I don't know when I'm going to stop adding layers, and I like sometimes for the fabric to show through the layers and just add a little more interest or depth to the piece as I continue to add layers and finish it. I do try to make sure that I don't have air pockets in these layers underneath the plaster wrap or underneath the fabric. So generally you want to try to do your best to make sure you have no gaps of air in there. So after I let this layer dry, I have these little cotton rounds, and I took those cotton rounds and I added those to the outside of this using the plaster and the concrete mixture, and I just wanted to do that to create an adornment on the outside of it. And I had done that and let that dry, but I forgot to turn the camera on when I did that step. So once that dried, at this point I went ahead and flipped the bowl around, and now I'm adding layers to the inside of it. Again, just wanting to make sure that I create a nice solid structure so that when I start applying the encaustic, it will be ready to go and nice and rigid. All of the materials that I'm using are compatible with the encaustic, so it doesn't matter which layer is going to be on the surface when I get ready to do the encaustic, because it's all ready to absorb that encaustic. This is a fibrous, it's an all-natural fibrous material. I have to be honest, I got this a while back and I'm pretty sure I bought it off of an Etsy site, but I don't remember what it's called. I do know it's an all-natural material. All of the materials I'm using are natural, meaning cotton, plaster, the burlap. So at this point, I went ahead and let all of that dry for a couple of days. Everything's nice and dry. And now I'm taking my gouache paints and my watercolor paints, and I'm just going to start adding color to the vessel. I decided I wanted to try to make the color on the bowl a little bit different colored, but then once I started I realized I got it a little too green for my taste, so went back and added some more blue and just started painting onto the bowl. So there's a lot of texture, and a lot of these materials, obviously the plaster and whatnot, is very absorbent. So it took the paint, I guess, unevenly, but I like that. I do like that a lot when I create my pieces. So just trying to create a little bit of depth and different colors as I was painting around here, knowing again that once I started applying encaustic, it's all going to change again anyway. I went ahead and used my heat gun to just help this dry. Again, it was absorbing, but there were a few areas I could tell were still wet, and I wanted it to dry really well, so every so often was just using my heat gun to hit it with a little bit of heat and helping that watercolor to dry. So once I got that dry, I went ahead and turned it over and started to paint the inside of the bowl, the vessel, and wanted this to be a little bit lighter in color, so got a different paint plate and started with a little bit lighter blue for the inside of the bowl. So as I'm painting these, I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm going to be adding layers of encaustic, and although these colors will be showing through, they won't be showing through in their entirety. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. It's kind of like working backwards very often when we do these processes, because we're building it from the inside out, if you will. And so the very last thing that I'm going to be doing in the other video, the second video that I'll be creating for you, is applying all of the different encaustic and the surface treatments and stuff. So some of this stuff is going to show and some of it will not. And I'm aware of that as I'm painting through there. Decided to add a little bit of yellow into this just to try to create some different areas of interest and make it a little bit different from the outside of the bowl. I went ahead and added some highlights to that, and then I have a distressing spray that's blue with some iridescent quality. Went ahead and sprayed the outside and the inside with a little bit of that, and then that's where I will end this video for you today. And stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be adding the encaustic and the finishing layers. Thank you for sticking in there with me today, and I can't wait to see some of the vessels that you guys will be creating.